I am very pleased to be here at the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade on the traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. And Bridget, thank you. Great to be here. Thanks for hosting us all. Just really grateful for all the work that you and the Chamber do in bringing the Vancouver business community together. It's very important for us, particularly during the times we're experiencing right now. So, and I do want to recognize as well our sponsors for today. Thank you, Teck, BC Hydro, Newmont, Elk Valley Resources, and the Mining Suppliers Association of BC. A very big thank you. Now, in case you didn't know it, May is Mining Month, where we celebrate the sector, its people, the great work that miners do for British Columbians, and how mining makes BC stronger. And I would be remiss not to mention that a key part of Mining Month is the BC Children's Hospital's Mining for Miracles campaign and the annual pie throw, which this year I'm skipping, saving myself for next year. Since 1998, our industry has raised more than $40 million in areas of critical need for the BC Children's Hospital. Yes. And starting last year, we've raised $2.25 million towards a $6 million goal to build a facility to support children living with complex chronic health conditions. It's an absolutely fantastic concept and much needed here in Vancouver and for the whole province. So in the spirit of Mining Month, I would encourage you all to pull out your phones and go to miningformiracles.ca and make a donation. And I'll just wait for you to do that. So today I'm going to talk to you about BC's mining sector and what it means for the future of our province, our nation, and here in Metro Vancouver. And I'm pleased to report that after actually delivering seven annual speeches to the Board of Trade, I come bearing some positive news, which is a welcome change. But before I get to that positive, allow me to focus on some hard facts. When I spoke here last year, in the early days of the Trump tariffs and all the turmoil they were causing, I talked about my twin boys and the concern that I had for them as they were preparing to graduate from high school. You know, would they have the same opportunities that I've enjoyed and that most of us here have enjoyed? Many of you face similar questions, whether you're planning your retirement mid-career or just starting your career. Well, I can tell you that a year on, my boys have just ended their first year of university, and those concerns haven't changed. In fact, in just one short year, they've intensified. Whether it's the rising unemployment, a slowing economy, or massive structural deficit that will take us years to dig out from, or perhaps the uncertainty regarding their CUSMA negotiations that are coming up, or the uncertainty associated with DRIPA, and how our government plans to solve fundamental issues that cut to the core of our province. Or maybe it's our ailing healthcare sector, whose wait times I am now all too familiar with because of my aging parents in their late 80s and my mother and father-in-law. I think everyone here can relate to some, if not all, of those concerns. And they do weigh on me every time I turn the news on. And I'm sure they weigh on you. And we need a pathway to a better, stronger future. And from my perspective as the president of the Mining Association of BC, when observing the sector and the global mining sector, mining offers us a huge opportunity to address many of these challenges. BC mining can meet the moment. So that's why I'm pleased after a number of years of inertia, there's actually momentum in BC's mining sector. Before I get to that, I think I'll just touch on the geopolitical context we find ourselves in today. And why that's important is because mining is a global industry. And that international environment has shifted dramatically this past year since I was here last. Pardon me. Last year in 2025, critical minerals emerged as a core national security consideration for a growing number of countries. You can trace this back to China restricting exports of critical minerals and rare earths, effectively weaponizing their stranglehold and dominance over the supply chain. In response, we all saw the US levied huge tariffs on China, and President Trump launched a $12 billion stockpile of critical minerals and rare earths, akin to the US Strategic Petroleum Reserve. At the same time, G7 countries, who are no less vulnerable, started taking action to shore up their own critical mineral supplies. And for its part, Canada has stepped up. And we are increasingly seen as the potential global go-to supplier of critical minerals and metals. There is a strong business case for critical minerals, apparently. In fact, Canada has led a G7 critical minerals pact that includes what they call the G7 Buyers Club, price floors, and critical minerals stockpiling. It's a coordinated strategy to counter Chinese market manipulation. And it builds on the G7 Critical Minerals Production Alliance that was launched by our Prime Minister, Mark Carney, at the G7 meeting last June in Alberta. But not surprising, critical minerals are an integral component of Canada's new defense industrial strategy that was released this last February. They're an essential element in helping Canada meet its target of spending 5% of GDP on defense and security-related investments by 2035. And this is why Canada is building its own strategic stockpile of critical minerals to bolster our domestic supply and our national security. And if we play our cards right, British Columbia can make a significant contribution to this effort. BC can play a lead role in supplying critical minerals to Canada and our NATO allies. We have here in BC, we have or produce 19 of Canada's 34 critical minerals. We also have 5 of 12 of what NATO refers to as defense critical minerals. And we have the ability through processing to produce 2 more. So 7, 12. Aluminum, germanium, cobalt, tungsten, rare earth elements. The bottom line is this. The world changed this past year, and BC's critical minerals are no longer essential only to address climate change and clean tech, or AI data centers and other modern technologies. They are now vital to protect our national security and our sovereignty. But our province's ability to contribute to this effort and gain additional market share, first mover advantage, depends on our ability to align our regulatory processes with the strategic objectives and timing of the Department of National Defense, Canadian Armed Forces, and our NATO allies. Not easy. That means BC must get its regulatory house in order so that we're seen as a reliable and timely supplier of defense critical minerals. We also need to remember our competition is not standing still. We may have what the world needs, but we ain't the only game in town. The US, for its part, is enacting aggressive regulatory and policy changes to attract investment and build, baby, build. Other global competitors like Chile, Peru, Australia, and even Saudi Arabia are moving ahead. Saudis are leveraging an estimated $2.5 trillion in untapped mineral wealth under their deserts. Phosphate, gold, copper, bauxite. Like they're going for it. Hard to believe that we'll be competing and are competing with Saudi Arabia. And our Laurentian brethren in Ontario and Quebec are moving quickly to kickstart and build on their existing critical minerals. Notwithstanding that competition, here in BC, there are reasons for optimism. There's considerable activity across the sector, as Doug referred to. We're seeing robust demand and favorable commodity prices, and the forecast and the supply-demand balance looks very favorable for BC. There's increasing interest from Europe, Asia, India, and the US. BC mining is on the upswing. And this is great news, especially given the economic challenges that we face here. In fact, we have new numbers that show in 2024, our sector benefited BC's economy to the tune of $19.6 billion in economic output, 56,000 jobs, 5.4 million in great paychecks for families around the province, and almost $6 billion in total government revenue to pay for public services. All of that from 18 mines and 2 smelters. Mining has a small physical presence, but a large economic impact in BC. Our mines punch well above their weight. So let me give you a quick update on what's happening here in BC. Why are we talking about momentum? Here's a few important examples. In early 2025, Premier Eby, the province, released a list of 18 major fast-tracked projects, 4 of which were mines. Today, 3 out of those 4 have been permitted and 2 are now under construction. One of those is Teck's Highland Valley Copper Mine near Logan Lake, where work is progressing on a $2 billion extension project at what is Canada's largest copper operation. There's also Skeena Gold and Silver's Eskay Creek project that received its environmental assessment and federal impact assessment certificate in January. Fantastic project. It will generate substantial economic benefits for the Tahltan Nation, local communities, all British Columbians, add 770 jobs, and deliver an estimated $14 billion in GDP. The third project to receive its permits was Centerra Gold's Mount Milligan mine, northwest of Prince George. That mine's extension will sustain more than 1,000 ongoing, high-paying jobs and expand business opportunities for First Nations and local communities. So now, of the 4 mines on that list, only Newmont's Red Chris underground block cave expansion in northwest BC awaits a permitting decision. So fingers crossed that comes next quarter. But wait, there's more. In December 2025, Conuma Resources' Quintet Mine Restart near Tumbler Ridge was permitted and is now operating and expanding. And in February, Hud Bay Minerals received their permit amendments for the new Ingerbelle expansion project at its Copper Mountain mine in Princeton, which will sustain more than 800 jobs in the vicinity and generate over $11.5 billion in GDP. And there's an impressive roster of other major mine projects advancing through the environmental assessment process. FPX Nickel's Baptiste project in central BC, Taseko's Yellowhead Copper and Gold project in Thompson-Nicola, Elk Valley Resources Fording River expansion in the Kootenays, and Thesis Gold and Silver's Lawyers Ranch project in northwest BC. But wait, there's still more. 3 other projects were recently referred to the BC government's Critical Minerals Office to de-risk and ready them for the regulatory review. Surge Copper's Berg project south of Smithers, Defense Metals' Wichita Rare Earth Deposit outside of Prince George, and North Isle Copper and Gold's North Island project on the island. When was the last time you saw a $1 billion private sector investment on Vancouver Island. These projects are a big deal. And there are others, including 24 proposed mining projects in northern BC alone. There's a huge amount of activity taking place in the north. We've got the construction of the North Coast Transmission Line, expected to start this summer, integral to mining in northwest BC. Tahltan and Nisga'a Nations and Aero Transport acquired Stewart Bulk Terminals so that they can ship copper concentrate to Asia. And infrastructure upgrades and northwest BC highway improvements funded by the federal and provincial governments to the tune of just shy of $200 million. The scale of possibility is extraordinary. Construction of those 24 projects alone would deliver over $67 billion in economic output to the province, which is a staggering number. And the north isn't the only place where mining shines. Elk Valley Resources recently released an economic impact study which shows the company's 4 Elk Valley steelmaking coal mines in the southeast of the province are driving that region's economy and, in fact, making a substantial contribution to the provincial economy, namely through supporting 3,500 high-paying jobs and $5.3 billion in annual GDP. A huge contribution. So I've spoken to you about northern BC, the interior, the Kootenays, but for many of you, the benefits of mining likely feel somewhat distant. So let me close that gap, because the prosperity of Metro Vancouver and Vancouver Island are deeply connected to mining. This was the case in the 1850s, as it is today. So let me put it this way. While Calgary has oil and gas, Vancouver has mining. Metro Vancouver is a global mining center. Most of the projects I mentioned, whether currently operating, under construction, or proposed, are outside of this region. They're in the hinterland. But this region benefits from those projects. And that will only grow as new projects come online. And there's 31 of them across the province. So that's why I'm happy to share details from a new report we released this morning at 10 a.m., highlighting the economic benefits mining delivers to Metro Vancouver and Vancouver Island. We engaged Mansfield Economic Consulting to crunch the numbers for us. And you can find this report at mining.bc.ca. The numbers are big and they're solid. For example, this new report shows that in 2024, BC's operating mines and smelters supported more than 12,300 jobs in Metro Vancouver. And they contributed over $3.5 billion in annual economic output to Metro Vancouver and Vancouver Island. And get this, the construction and ongoing operation of one new mine in the province, let's say in the interior, would deliver economic output of $4.6 billion and $1.2 billion in paychecks to the region. And that's just one mine. So you might not be aware that Metro Vancouver is also a hub for nearly 1,000 mining and exploration companies with a combined market cap of $449 billion. We crunched all those numbers. Those are current as of March 31st. And I know Todd Stone and the Association for Mineral Explorers are here today. And mineral exploration plays a key role in that cluster we have here. The region also boasts a world-class talent pool of equipment and service providers, as well as engineering, geoscience, legal, accounting, corporate functions, and transportation services. And while these companies service BC's mining sector, they also now export those services and supplies around the world to other mines. In fact, according to one analyst who you may know, Rick Rule, he said, Vancouver has become a city that has one of the largest population bases of mining professionals in the world. The message is clear. Mining is a key pillar of Metro Vancouver's economy, and its growth potential is significant. In addition, Doug mentioned the merger between Anglo American and Teck Resources. That will only add to Metro Vancouver's reputation as a global mining center. Very exciting. The merger brings together two world-class mining firms to create one of the world's largest critical mineral companies and a top 10 copper producer right here in Vancouver. And it is a major vote of confidence in British Columbia and Metro Vancouver in terms of our mining future. Now, that all sounds pretty good. But, and there's always a but, to sustain this momentum, we need certainty. True, meaningful gains are being made, but there's much more work to do. Permitting improvements and highly focused efforts are producing some results. We are seeing new projects move forward, 5 since last June. However, lengthy and complex permitting processes remain the primary barrier to new mine development, delaying investment, job creation, and government revenues in BC. There's more work to do to build on this momentum and drive systemic change and durable improvements to accelerate our province's mine permitting process. In British Columbia, as a global mining center, permitting should be a competitive advantage. Further, to sustain certainty, government must address the implications of DRIPA, which is now a top-of-mind issue for British Columbians. Economic reconciliation is a core value of BC's mining industry. We've partnered with First Nations for decades and will continue to do so. Clearly, though, the provincial government must restore certainty and clarity to ensure a stable investment climate for mine development. The uncertainty following the BC Court of Appeals Gitgatla decision last December has raised significant questions for project development in our province. And that uncertainty comes at a time when mining and critical minerals development are more important than ever. There's a clear need for durable public policy and capacity building to advance economic reconciliation with individual First Nations. So while the province works through these issues, BC's mine operators and advanced development companies will continue to work with their First Nations partners to grow our industry for the benefit of all British Columbians. Next is fiscal competitiveness, and it is critical to sustain momentum. And unfortunately, the most recent provincial budget moves entirely in the opposite direction, which is something that's very important to the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade and all businesses. The expansion of the PST introduces new costs that impact mining operations across the province. Let me give an example of an advanced stage mining project. One junior mining development company estimates that PSD will add between $2 to $3 million in costs for their project from 2027 to 2030. You may say to yourself, it doesn't sound like a huge amount of money. Actually, it is. And the thing you have to realize is that that project has no existing revenue. It has no cash flow. It goes to the market to borrow that money. Raise that money, sorry. So applying the PSD to accounting, engineering, and geoscience services raises costs for operating mines and junior miners, not to mention our refineries. So this is totally at odds with advancing the very sector government has identified as a foundational economic driver. BC must improve competitiveness, not make BC more expensive to operate in. Our last priority is skills training. This is very important. Our sector offers tremendous career opportunities. Global demand for critical minerals, precious metals, and steelmaking coal is driving growth in our sector. And with it, demand for skilled workers across the trades and other professional occupations. These are careers that allow people the option of working in Vancouver or more affordable communities across BC to build a meaningful career and the promise of security for their families. The problem is we have an aging workforce, and attracting new talent remains a challenge. According to the Mining Industry Human Resources Council, we will need a net new 5,000 additional workers here in BC over the next decade to meet the projected demand. Behind those numbers, we actually need around 20,000 people. So I'm going to conclude my remarks today by saying this. Despite our anemic economy, I'm optimistic about the future of BC's mining sector. That optimism is grounded in real progress if we continue to make strides on permitting. It's also grounded in Canada and British Columbia's growing role as trusted suppliers of critical minerals, metals, and other vital materials. And it's based on the fact British Columbia has the mineral reserves and resources, the expertise, and the entrepreneurial drive to succeed. We see it every day. That said, I'm also a realist. And I know that momentum alone is not enough. As a sector, we will continue to argue the case that mining is essential and vital to British Columbia's future. We will continue to urge senior government to make mine permitting a competitive advantage for BC and right across Canada. Because certainty attracts investment, investment builds projects, and projects build prosperity. Together, we can position BC as a leading global supplier of the minerals, metals, and steelmaking coal our partners and allies need. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and we're beginning to see the benefits. Now more than ever, we need to remain focused, committed, and determined. And with the right decisions, British Columbians can rely on our mining sector to supply the minerals and metals that power the future and drive British Columbia's economy, including right here in Metro Vancouver. Because a strong mining sector means a strong British Columbia. Thank you.